Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Barokoshama and today we're going to be doing a video guide for the Elemental Shaman for patch 7.1.5. In this video guide we're going to be talking about all the class changes that have happened, the talents that have been changed, and the new talent compositions such as the Ascendance, the Ice Fury, and the Lightning Rod builds that we're going to be using now in this patch. There's going to be a lot of information that's in this video, so if you want to skip ahead to a specific portion of the video, or you think you missed something and you want to re-review it, you can easily navigate throughout the video using the annotations listed up above. But without further ado, let's get started with the class changes that have happened in this new patch. There's a lot of them. So for the general ones, covering over for the shamans, our lava burst damage has been increased to 275%, ancestral swiftness haste is now 6% down from 10, earth grab totem is now rooting for 8 seconds. Going into our elemental specific changes, our earth elemental has actually been significantly buffed. So now it has a 400% of caster's armor, up from 200%, now has 25% of casters spell power as attack power and 45% of spell power as attack power as Prima Elemental version. That's if you're spec'ing to the Prima Elemental talent, and this was 5%. Creates a greater deal of threat to nearby enemies, now has a duration of 1 minute up from 15 seconds and a cooldown of 5 minutes up from 2 minutes. There's been several elemental talents changes and rearranges for our talents. So the Elemental Blast replaces Ice Fury at level 75. Ice Fury replaces Liquid Magma Totem at level 100. Liquid Magma Totem replaces Elemental Mastery at level 90. Elemental Mastery replaces Echo of the Elements at level 60. Echo of the Elements replaces Aftershock at level 90. And Aftershock replaces Elemental Blast at level 60. I'm going to be doing a side-by-side comparison between the old and the new, so you guys are going to be able to see what the difference is. Aftershock now refunds 30% of Maelstrom, up from 25%. Earth and Rage damage is now 55% of spell power, up from 50%. Earthquake's duration, meaning how long the earthquake was on the ground for, is now 6 seconds, down from 10 seconds, and its damage per tick is increased to 50%, up from 30%. This is actually a pretty big damage increase to Earthquake, because all the damage that was spread out over the duration of 10 seconds is now squeezed into the duration of 6 seconds, so it's a pretty big damage increase for our Earthquake spell. Elemental Blast damage is now 680%, was 525%. Elemental Blast now provides a bonus of 2400 to a stat, up from 1200 to a stat, and Ice Fury damage is now 900%, up from 180%. Liquid Magma Totem damage is now 110%, up from 80%, and Path of Flame bonus to Lava Burst is now 10%, was 5%. Our Storm Elemental has been changed a little bit. Its cooldown has been halved to 2.5 minutes from 5 minutes, and its duration halved from 30 seconds to 30 seconds from 60 seconds. But its spells have received a little bit of buffs. Its Wind Gust damage is now 48%, up from 42%, and its Call Lightning damage has been increased to 96%, up from 84%. So, as a big mouthful. As you guys can see, there's been a lot of changes to our spells and talents, but moving on to what the talents actually look like now. So currently on live, here on the left, as you can see, this is what our talents look like. We have, obviously, our tier 1 hasn't changed, but everything from 60 to 100 has either been rearranged or changed positions. So our Aftershock is over here now instead of our Elemental Blast. We have Elemental Mastery over here instead of Echo of the Elements, and now we have Elemental Blast over here instead of Ice Fury. We have Liquid Magma over here instead of Elemental Mastery, and then of course Echo of the Elements instead of Aftershock, and then Ice Fury instead of Liquid Magma Totem. So there's been some changes and rearranges, but that just results in some different build paths that we're able to use, and a lot of different scenarios that we can differentiate from each other with talent selection. So it's pretty fun now that we can change our talents based on what scenarios are in front of us. So starting out with what isn't changed as well is our artifact weapon build path. This is nice because consistency for this kind of a thing is well needed. So we're still going into our first path with Firestorm right after Surge of Power into Elementalist, Protection of the Elements, Static Overload. That's our first goal, getting that. From there, we want to get Molten Blast and our first golden trait, Power of the Maelstrom. After Power of the Maelstrom, we're going to move down to Lava Imbued, Call of Thunder, and Fury of the Storms. From Fury of the Storms, we want to move up to Ground Trembles, Earthen Attunement, and Volcanic Inferno, our final golden trait. Moving down, we're going to finish off our weapon with Electric Discharge, Master of the Elements, and Shamanistic Healing. And then every point after that is going to be going into Stormkeeper's Power. So it's nice that we're going to have consistency with something as set in stone and needed to be set in stone as our artifact traits. When it comes to legendaries, we have a new one, Uncertain Reminder, as well as Kil'jaeden's Burning Wish. Uncertain Reminder is actually a very good one, a very good legendary. Increases our heroism effect by 75%, so it's longer on us by 75%. This is very nice. When it comes to legendaries and build paths, Ascendance becoming the first one that we're going to be covering. Pristine Proto Scale Girdle as well as Eye of the Twisting Nether are the two best legendaries with that build. And for the Ice Fury build, Uncertain Reminder and Eye of the Twisting Nether are the two best legendaries for that build. Let's get started with the first build. Ascendance. Ascendance is the type of build that's very high on single target burst. We want to hurl as much lava as fast as possible and as hard as possible at our enemies to disintegrate them with lava and awesomeness, right? So Path of Flame is going to be a big talent for this. It's increasing our damage done by our lava burst by 10%. That is huge because lava burst is our biggest hitting spell as well as the damaging spell that is across the board our biggest damage dealer for the entirety of our spell kit. So Path of Flame is very useful for here. Moving down to Ascendance or Ancestral Swiftness, Elemental Mastery can be used, but Ancestral Swiftness usually comes out ahead of Elemental Mastery, so we want to usually keep Ancestral Swiftness used. Elemental Blast is very useful. The only time I would switch out of this is when we're on a council fight or maybe a fight that adds are going to be out for an extended amount of time and we can constantly keep up flame shocks on all the targets at all times. That's when Elemental Fusion becomes more useful than Elemental Blast, enabling us to cast more and more Lava Burst thanks to the increased trigger rate of Lava Surge. Moving on, Echo of the Elements is very, very useful. The only time I would switch out of this is if you're in a Mythic Plus and you decide to go with the Ascendance build. Liquid Magma Totem becomes a little bit more useful in some situations, such as high adds or high mobs in dungeons such as Karazhan or maybe Blackrock Hold, for instance. I would use Liquid Magma Totem in that kind of situation, but for the majority of the time, Echo of the Elements shines brighter. Ascendance obviously being used because it is the Ascendance build. Let's talk about stats and relics. So for the Ascendance build, Mastery is by far the most helpful stat, and crit coming in after that. But when it comes to Mastery, we want to cap ourselves at 86.5%, and I'll tell you why. If we get the Mastery buff from our Elemental Blast, if we're at 86.5% Mastery, we will then jump to 100% and be casting and overloading 100% of the time. Any more Mastery past 86.5% becomes null when we use Elemental Blast and we receive the Mastery buff. Therefore, you want to cap yourself off at 86.5% Mastery and try and get as much crit after that. When it comes to the ratio from Mastery to crit, you want to have maybe half as much as crit as you do Mastery, and then from there on, haste and versatility. When it comes to relics, Lava Imbued is a no-brainer. We're doing lava burst damage all the time, and Lava Imbued just makes sense. So it is the best one by far, as you can see, followed by Molten Blast, Call of the Thunder, Earthen Atonement, an item level upgrade, and then Firestorm relics. So let's move on to what the opener is going to look like. And it's actually pretty simple. I'll be doing a video for you guys that's going to demonstrate and go play by play for what the openers are going to look like, how they're going to feel, and how you're going to get those big burst numbers out of each of the builds. But for this one, we're going to be talking about it at a face value as well as on the written format. All of the information that you've seen on this video can be found in the video's description down below. All the class changes I got from mmochampion.com. I'll be putting a link to that in the description down below, as well as all the information on talents, relics, stat priorities, opening sequences, and normal rotations, stuff that you're going to see pop up on the screen. All of that information can be found on the Storm Earth and Lava Shaman website. I'll be putting a link to that in the description as well. So for the Ascendance opener, we're going to precast or cast Fire Elemental at 3 seconds into a pre-pot of either Potion of Deadly Grace or Prolonged Power. After that, we're going to use a Lightning Bolt and cast Flame Shock. You may or may not use Lust at this point, depending on whether your group is going to be using it off the start or saving it for a certain moment in the fight. Once that Lust and Flame Shock have been used, or not used in the case of Lust, we're going to then use 2 casts of Lava Burst, getting rid of our stacks from Echo of the Elements, followed up with a Elemental Blast, and then refreshing Flame Shock. In this sense, we're going to have enough mastery for Flame Shock to be its full duration, which is 36 seconds. And then as well, we're going to have a stack of Elemental Focus to buff it by 10%. After this Flame Shock is then reapplied, we're going to cast Ascendance and just hurl lava out the butt. It's going to be nuts. We're going to be using Lava Burst as much as possible, as fast as possible, as well as using trinkets and racials if you're like a troll or maybe an orc. You're going to be using those at the same time that you cast your Ascendance, so I recommend maybe macroing those together. During Ascendance, you want to be using Lava Burst as much as possible, like I said, and using Elemental Blast when it comes off of cooldown. Do not use Earth Shock. The only reason you should be using Earth Shock in Ascendance is if you only have less than 2 seconds left on Ascendance and casting a Lava Burst. And while casting that final Lava Burst, your Ascendance buff will fall off and you will lose a stack of Echo of the Elements therefore, which actually means you're losing out on Maelstrom. So to negate that problem, I would use Earth Shock if you have less than 2 seconds left on Ascendance, and then go with using those 2 stacks of Lava Burst. Coming out of Ascendance, we want to be using Stormkeeper and getting those 3 stacks of Lightning Bolts off. So after that opening sequence, we go into our regular rotation. A regular rotation is pretty much a spell priority. This is the case with pretty much all 3 builds. Well, let's go over it. Cast Flame Shock if the target does not have Flame Shock applied, as well as if there is only 9 seconds left or less on Flame Shock currently on the target. You have 20 Maelstrom available to use or more, and as well as a stack of Elemental Focus available to use for that Flame Shock. Cast Lava or Elemental Blast on cooldown and whenever it's available. This is a high spell priority, and you want to cast this like after priority of your Flame Shock. Earth Shock comes in afterwards at 92 Maelstrom or higher. Then Lightning Bolt, if you have Power of the Maelstrom, is active, and Lava Burst has fewer than 2 charges. If you have 2 charges of Lava Burst and you have maybe stacks of Power of the Maelstrom, it is more beneficial to cast those stacks of Lava Burst instead. Or cast that 1 stack of Lava Burst instead, and then continue getting rid of those Power of the Maelstrom stacks with those Lightning Bolts. After that, we prioritize Earth Shock if we have 86 or higher Maelstrom, and Lava Surge is not up. If Lava Surge is up, we want to be using our Lava Burst and then cast the Earth Shock. After that, priority comes to our Stormkeeper with the ability to use all 3 charges. After that, we use our Lava Burst if we have a Lava Surge, and the Stormkeeper buff will be up for more than 1.5 seconds per stack remaining. This means pretty much if you have Stormkeeper buff active and you have enough time to cast your Lava Burst and then use those stacks of Stormkeeper as well. After that, the priority pretty much is just casting Lava Burst off cooldown and Lightning Bolt as a filler. So this rotation is not very hard at all, pretty easy to come by and use. Next, we're going to go over the Ice Fury build. The Ice Fury build changes up the talents a little bit using Earth and Rage, which pretty much promotes the fact that Ice Fury is a very mobile spec. Ice Fury is all about using small burst cooldowns and maintaining your Maelstrom, as well as maintaining the fact that you need to get rid of those stacks from those small cooldowns in a effective manner, let's say. So the way that we set up our talents is Earth and Rage. This does a decent amount of damage, and it promotes, like I said, the fact that Ice Fury is such a mobile spec. So why not have a mobile talent to go with it? Ancestral Swiftness, out of the three, is the best in this situation, coming into Elemental Blast, being a it's a staple talent for pretty much all three builds, and it's a very powerful talent. It increases your stats by a very significant amount. Followed by that, Echo of the Elements, and then Ice Fury. The only time I would probably switch out of Elemental Blast is if you're in a dungeon, a Mythic Plus, and Tyrannical is one of the buffs for that week. Maybe I would use Primal Elementalist. So the stats and the relics used in the Ice Fury are pretty close to that of the Ascendants. When we talk about stats, Mastery and Crit are equal to each other, being at the top. Again, Mastery has a cap of 86.5, but we want to keep Mastery and Crit pretty close together, so you may not reach that threshold unless you have way too much Mastery gear. After that, Haste and Versatility come in last. When it comes to our relics, Lava Imbued is the top relic. You'll see this across the board, but it's just more effective with the Ascendants just because we're casting more Lava Bursts. But after Lava Imbued, Molten Blast, then Call of the Thunder, followed up with a 1+1 item level upgrade on the weapon, then Firestorm and Earthen Attunement. This build is pretty complicated when it comes to maintaining your cooldowns as well as your rotation, but we're going to try and explain it as best as possible here with the opener. So when it comes to the opener, it can get pretty, the word I'm looking for, frightening and hard to do unless you have the practice to do it, or have been practicing and you have the mindset and you're good to go with this. I don't recommend using this build unless you've practiced it. So it can get pretty out of hand pretty fast, but let's explain. So 3 seconds for the pull, we want to cast our Fire Elemental. 2 seconds, we want to pre-pot with either Potion of Deadly Grace or Potion of Prolonged Power, followed up with an Elemental Blast. After that Elemental Blast, when we immediately start cooldown or start combat, we want to cast that Lava Burst into a Flame Shock. At this point, you probably want to hit that Lust button if you're using it off the rip, or save it if you're not. At this point, we're also going to use a Ice Fury, followed by a Stormkeeper, using that Lava Burst and those 3 stacks of Lightning Bolts. We want to gain as much Maelstrom as fast as possible to expel all that Maelstrom into our 4 Frost Shocks later. So as you see, number 7, cast that Elemental Blast because it'll be off cooldown at this point, and then expend all that Maelstrom into the 4 Frost Shocks. Following this, we're going to talk about our normal rotation and spell priority. So, pretty similar for the beginning of it when it comes to the Ice Fury, and it's pretty similar to the Ascendance build when it comes to the first couple spells. Casting our Flame Shock if it's not on the target or it has 9 seconds or less, as well as you having 20 Maelstrom or more and a stack of Elemental Focus to be used with that Flame Shock. After that, our priority is keeping Elemental Blast on cooldown and using it whenever it's available. Casting Earth Shock when you have 92 or higher Maelstrom. And then after that, we have Ice Fury. Ice Fury, you should only cast it when it's available, and if you are not going to cap on your Maelstrom. So if you have more than 76 Maelstrom, use an Earth Shock before you use that Ice Fury. But you also want to be able to use all 4 stacks of that Ice Fury with Frost Shocks. So that's the only time you should be using the Ice Fury. After that, casting Frost Shock immediately once you use the Ice Fury will avoid capping Maelstrom. So if you're at 76 Maelstrom, Frost Shock gives you 24 Maelstrom. So you want to use it immediately after so that if it overloads, you will not cap. Priority after that is casting Lava Burst when Lava Surge is active, or if you have 2 charges of Lava Burst. After that, casting Frost Shock if and only if you have 20 Maelstrom or higher and you have a stack of Ice Fury available. After that, we have casting a Stormkeeper, casting Lava Burst, and of course filler of Lightning Bolt. So this rotation can be pretty crazy, pretty intimidating. That's a word I would have used for the opener, that's for sure. But once you get a handle of it, and once you see what is really happening, it becomes very fluid and fun and challenging. So I definitely recommend testing this build out. You won't regret it. So let's talk about the next build, which is the Lightning Rod build. A couple talents change here, of course, Lightning Rod being one of them in Totem Mastery. The way that Totem Mastery helps out with Lightning Rod is the fact that we have a 10% increased chance, flat 10% increased chance for our Lightning Bolts and Chain Lightnings to overload. The way Chain Lightning works is that it will have a third of our Mastery rating to actually proc itself, to actually proc overload. So if I have 80 Mastery rating, it has maybe a 26% chance for my Chain Lightning per target to overload. That being said, Totem Mastery increases that chance by 10%. 10% flat, so now I'll have a 36% chance for all those targets that are hit for it to overload, which just makes it even better. Plus the Maelstrom generation, Flame Shock damage, and increased haste only help. 6% extra haste is a big one, especially when we're dealing with Mythic Plus dungeons. Elemental Blast being very, very big. And the only time that I recommend using this, again, is in Mythic Pluses when bosses have Tyrannical. Primal Elementalist might pull ahead. We'll see. Echo of the Elements and Liquid Magma Totem. These two are the ones that I'm going to talk about. Echo of the Elements is really, really big on single target damage. Liquid Magma Totem is also big, but in AoE situations. So like those situations that we talked about earlier, aka Karazhan being full of mobs. Big pulls all the time, right? As well as a dungeon such as Blackrook Hold. Full of mobs, big pulls all the time. Liquid Magma Totem might pull ahead in that situation, so keep that in mind. But for the majority of the time, for single target, you want to be using Echo of the Elements. Lightning Rod, of course, is our build path here. Let's talk about stats and relics. In a Radiant situation, crit is equal to mastery when it comes to the Lightning Rod build. You'll see crit and mastery a lot being at the top when it comes to the 3 builds, just because of how the buffs worked with us this patch. Of course, crit and mastery, and then haste and versatility being farther back. When it comes to dungeons though, haste is our top priority. That's where Ancestral Swiftness becomes so useful. Critical Strike being after that, followed by mastery and versatility being in dead last. Let's talk about relics. Lava Imbued. You'll see this again, it's at the top. This is because of the amount of damage that Lava Burst is doing patch, and Echo of the Elements being one of our talents of choice here. Lava Imbued is super strong this patch, and if you don't have your hands on one, I definitely recommend getting one. Getting them all, actually. Try and get all 3 Lava Imbued. It just works well because you can use one relic for all 3 builds. After Lava Imbued, second is called the Thunder, then Molten Blast, Earthen Attunement, 1 item level upgrade, and then Firestorm. Let's talk about what the opener is going to look like. The opener is very simple. Very, very simple. Probably the simplest out of all 3 builds. It's true though. 3 seconds before the pull, we want to cast our Fire Elemental, followed up by a Potion of Prolonged Power or Deadly Grace. Follow that Deadly Grace with a Elemental Blast and then a Frost Shock. At this point, you're also going to Lust if you want, or save it for a certain part of the fight. Once we're in combat, we're going to start off with a Lava Burst, followed up with a Stormkeeper cast and a Lightning Bolt. All 3 charges of Lightning Bolt. Okay, moving on to what our Lightning Rod rotation and stat priority or spell priority looks like. Again, it's pretty similar to the other ones, starting off with the first 3 priorities. So our Flame Shock is number 1, keeping that on the target, refreshing it at 9 seconds, as well as having 20 Maelstrom and a stack of Elemental Focus for that refresh. Elemental Blast coming in second for our spell priority, and then Earth Shock when we have 92 or higher Earth or Maelstrom. After that, casting Lava Burst with Lava Surge activates, Earth Shock with 86 or higher Maelstrom, and then Lava Burst and Chain Lightning being or Lava Burst and Lightning Bolt being our filler. If you have 2 targets, I recommend using a Chain Lightning instead to do more cleave damage as well as generate more Maelstrom instead of casting Lava or Lightning Bolt as the filler spell. So Honestly, out of all the 3 builds, I recommend using either Ascendance or Ice Fury. You know, Ice Fury is apparently the top build when it comes to damage output, but not by much. Ascendance and Ice Fury are very, very close together. I'd say like 2% of difference between Ascendance and Ice Fury. When it comes to situations and changing your talents accordingly, I would use definitely Ascendance 100% of the time. Use on council fights, and Ice Fury, you gotta be good at it in order for you to be above that 2% difference than Ascendance. I would use Ice Fury for single target, high movement fights for sure, and Lightning Rod, I would definitely use it for Mythic Plus dungeons and high cleave situations. So each build has its respective situations and scenarios, and that's what I like so much about this patch. We have choices to make. We're not stuck with this one cookie cutter build like we were in 7.1 with just Lightning Rod just being the best all around. So this is very, very good patch. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. It really helps me out. You can find me on my social medias in the description down below. You can watch me live on Twitch as well. Like I said before, I'm going to have the links in the description for the websites where I got the information, aka MMO Champion and stormearthandlava.com. But yeah, guys, I hope you liked the video, and until next time, keep calm and Maelstrom on.